Right, so we're back for another deep dive. And, I love these stories about missing persons in the wilderness.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
It's just so fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're out there enjoying the beauty of nature, and then suddenly it
Yeah.
can turn on you in an instant.
Yeah, and today we're looking at this YouTube video. It's full of these stories, missing hikers, campers, you name it.
It's a good one.
All these people who vanished in national parks and wilderness areas. And it's like, it really makes you think twice about venturing too far off the beaten path.
You know what gets me is how
Right.
these cases play into our deepest fears about the unknown. Like,
Yeah.
we think we can control things, but out there in the wilderness,
You can't.
you're really at the mercy of nature.
Absolutely. And that's what's
Yeah.
so scary about it.
Yeah.
That feeling of vulnerability.
Right.
Like you said, you're out there enjoying the scenery and then bam, something goes wrong and you're totally lost and helpless.
Exactly. And, one of the things that I find particularly fascinating is how even experienced outdoors people can become victims.
Oh, totally. Like that first case, we're going to talk about Scott Griffith.
Oh, yeah.
He was hiking in Alaska with his wife on the Roots Glacier Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be like a pretty well-maintained trail, not too difficult.
Yeah.
But even on those seemingly safe trails, things can go wrong fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even on a well-traveled trail, you're still in a remote environment.
Right.
And in Griffith's case, that remoteness proved fatal.
Yeah, he had a heart attack, and even though his wife and rescuers tried their best to get to him,
Yeah.
the time it took was just too long.
It's a tragic reminder that the wilderness doesn't discriminate
Doesn't care.
between experienced hikers and casual day trippers.
Yeah, the mountains don't care.
Exactly.
It makes you think about all the gear we rely on out there.
Yeah.
Like, is a first aid kit enough?
Mm-hmm.
Should we all be carrying satellite phones? I mean, what's enough when you're dealing with those kinds of situations?
It's a tough question.
Uh,
A lot of people struggle with that balance.
yeah.
You want to be prepared, but you also don't want to let fear
Right?
prevent you from enjoying the outdoors.
Exactly.
But I think Griffith's case really highlights the importance of
yeah.
knowing your limits, planning ahead, and being aware of the risks,
Totally.
even on those seemingly safe trails.
Okay, so we've got a seemingly safe trail turning deadly.
Right.
But what about someone who knows the wilderness, like the back of their hand, a park ranger?
Yeah.
That brings us to Jeff Christensen, who vanished in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh, yeah, that one's...
A strange one.
It's perplexing.
Yeah, he was on a routine patrol and then just disappeared.
And the signals they received during the search,
Oh, yeah. I read about that.
the gunfire, the radio clicks.
Yeah, it's like the wilderness was messing with them.
It really is.
Yeah, leading them on a wild goose chase.
They thought he was alive and trying to signal for help. Right.
They found his body.
Yeah, miles away in a steep basin.
So those signals were a false lead.
Yeah, and to this day, nobody knows where they came from.
It's like a ghost story.
Some say it was other hikers.
Yeah.
Malfunctioning equipment, echoes distorted by the terrain. Who knows?
It just adds to the mystery.
It really does.
So now I'm officially creeped out.
Yeah.
We've got a safe trail turning deadly. A park ranger vanishing without a trace.
Oh, it makes you wonder.
And it's not just the not knowing what happened. It's the sheer scale of these places.
Yeah.
Finding a missing person in a vast wilderness area.
It's a needle in a haystack.
It's got to be incredibly difficult.
It is. Search and rescue teams face incredible challenges.
Yeah.
Rugged terrain, unpredictable weather.
Right.
And as time passes, those chances of finding someone alive, they dwindle.
Exactly.
It's a race against time.
Which brings us to Riley Zickel.
Oh, yeah, the college student.
Yeah, he went missing in the Mount Jefferson wilderness.
And they didn't find his body for years. Yeah, it was eventually discovered in a glacier.
A glacier. Wow.
Those are particularly tough searches.
I can imagine, how do you even begin to search a glacier?
It's constantly changing.
Right.
Crevasses open and close, ice melts and refreezes. Bodies can be transported miles from where they first went missing.
It's like the glacier is a moving puzzle.
Exactly.
So for Zickel's family, it was years of not knowing.
Yeah, that ambiguous loss.
It's got to be just devastating.
It is not knowing whether your loved one is dead or alive.
It's a different kind of grief.
Absolutely. It can be incredibly debilitating.
And some of these cases where no bodies are ever found,
Yeah.
it's almost like the wilderness has swallowed them whole, leaving no trace behind.
Like they just vanished into thin air.
And it just begs the question, what happened to them?
That's the question that haunts investigators and families alike.
Yeah, and it's in those cases where logic and imagination start to blur.
Exactly. You start to wonder if there's something more going on.
More than just an accident.
Maybe something more sinister.
That's where we venture next.
Into the realm of the unexplained,
The cases that defy easy explanations.
where the question of what happened becomes even more complex.
And even more chilling.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're getting into the cases where it's not just the wilderness being unpredictable.
Right.
It's like there's something else going on. Maybe even foul play.
Yeah, that element of human intention
Yeah.
adds a whole other layer of complexity.
It's like you can't just blame it on nature anymore.
Exactly.
And one case that really exemplifies this is the disappearance of Russell Hill and Carol Clay in Australia.
Oh, yeah, the one in Gotta Valley case?
Yeah, that one's got everything. A burnt campsite, a missing drone.
And a suspect with a background that's just...
I know, it's like ripped from a crime novel.
It really is. You know, that burnt campsite right off the bat.
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
Was it an accident? Were they trying to stay warm?
Right?
Or was it deliberate to cover their tracks?
And then the missing drone.
It's like a piece of the puzzle that's just gone.
Yeah, what happened to it?
It belonged to Russell Hill, and it could hold crucial clues.
It's like the wilderness swallowed it up.
And then you have Greg Lynn.
The suspect.
Yeah, the fact that he's a former police officer.
And a fire forensic expert.
It's almost too perfect.
I know, right? It's like he knows how to cover his tracks.
But at the same time, you know, his knowledge of fire behavior and
Yeah.
forensics led him to believe that there was foul play from the start.
This is like a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
He might have known how to get away with it.
But that knowledge could also be his downfall.
And let's not forget about the location itself.
One in Agata Valley.
It's remote rugged.
The perfect place to hide a secret.
Yeah, it's like the wilderness is protecting something.
And the fact that Hill and Clay were experienced campers,
They knew the area.
it makes their disappearance even more baffling.
Okay, so we've got a missing couple, a burnt campsite, a missing drone, a suspect with a shady background.
It's a lot to unpack.
But let's bring it closer to home now with a case that's haunted investigators for decades. Connie Smith.
Oh, yeah, the young girl who disappeared from summer camp.
It's heartbreaking, a 10-year-old girl vanishing without a trace.
From a place that's supposed to be safe.
Right, you'd think she'd be safe at camp.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
It's Connecticut's biggest missing persons case, right?
That's right. And despite all the searches and leads,
Nothing.
the case remains unsolved.
And they even brought in a psychic.
I remember reading about that.
It shows how desperate they were for answers,
It speaks to that human need to make sense of the unthinkable,
to find some kind of explanation.
even if it means turning to the paranormal.
When traditional methods fail, you got to try something else.
You know, I wonder, in cases like Connie Smith's,
Yeah.
do investigators ever really give up hope?
It's a good question.
Hmm.
I mean, even when a case goes cold, there's always that possibility that something new will come up.
Advances in DNA technology, forensic science, even social media.
It can all help to crack a case.
It just takes one little break, one new piece of information,
So there's always a glimmer of hope.
even in the darkest of cases.
Okay, so we've talked about cases where the wilderness might be hiding a crime.
Right.
But what about those instances where the wilderness itself holds the answers?
Where time and the elements reveal what happened.
Yeah. It's a bittersweet resolution.
It is, but sometimes those discoveries can offer a form of closure.
And maybe even some insight into the human condition.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the wilderness has this way of holding on to its secrets and then finally revealing them.
Like it's on its own timeline.
Right, exactly. And sometimes those revelations can bring a sense of peace, even if it's bittersweet.
Yeah, it's a form of closure.
Like with Thomas Messick's search.
Oh, yeah, like the hunter in New York.
They never found his body,
Yeah.
but they did establish a memorial gravesite for him.
It's a way to honor his memory even without the physical remains.
Yeah, it's a place for his loved ones to gather and grieve.
Right, to acknowledge that even though his body is missing, the impact of his loss is still very real.
And it's a way to create closure even when the answers are still out there.
Yeah, it's about finding peace in the unknown.
And then there's the story of Geraldine Largy Inchworm.
Oh, yeah, on the Appalachian Trail.
She was hiking, solo, got lost, and her remains were found 2 years later.
The sad ending.
But what's really interesting is they found her journal,
Oh, wow.
and her entries give us this glimpse into her final days.
Her thoughts, her fears, her hopes.
It's like we get to understand what she went through.
It's a powerful testament to the human spirit, that will to survive even in the face of unimaginable adversity.
It must have been so difficult for her family to read those words,
I can't even imagine.
but also maybe a little bit comforting to know what happened.
To have some answers.
Yeah, and then you have Rudy Motor, the German skier who disappeared in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh, yeah.
His remains were found decades later.
Decades. Wow.
It just shows you that sometimes closure comes when you least expect it.
And that search and rescue teams never really give up.
Their remains.
They're dedicated to bringing those lost souls home.
And for Mortar's family, after all those years, to finally have some answers.
To be able to lay him to rest.
It's got to be incredibly meaningful.
It's about finding peace and healing.
Yeah, and these stories, they remind us that even in the vastness of the wilderness, there's a chance for things to come full circle.
To find resolution.
But they also highlight how important it is to respect the power of nature.
Absolutely.
To be prepared to understand the risks when we venture into these wild spaces.
You know, we've seen how quickly things can go wrong out there.
Right.
How easily a simple hike can turn into a life or death situation.
And these cases serve as a reminder that the wilderness is not to be taken lightly.
It's a force to be reckoned with.
A place where beauty and danger coexist.
Where we need to be mindful, observant, and prepared for the unexpected.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask you, the listener, what's your biggest takeaway from all this?
Yeah. What are you walking away with?
Is it the importance of preparedness, the psychological toll of not knowing, or maybe just the enduring mystery that surrounds these cases?
I think for me, it's a combination of all those things.
Yeah, me too. And I hope this deep dive has given you a sense of awe for the power of nature.
It's a powerful force.
And a renewed appreciation for the importance of safety and respect when we're out there exploring.
We're just visitors in the wilderness.
We need to treat it with reverence.
And remember those who have been lost.
So next time you're out on a trail or in a forest,
Yeah.
remember these stories. Let them be a guide.
A reminder to be prepared to stay aware and to never underestimate the power of the wild.
Keep exploring, stay curious, and most importantly, stay safe.
Until next time.